I'm no good at taking good advice, and I'm self-careless, so don't tell me twice that lately I've been so stuck in my head that I forget just about everything my therapist said. Maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe we are all self-helpless.
Hey everyone, welcome to Self-Helpless. I'm Delanie Fischer, and today I'm joined by Dr. Romie Mushtaq, who is a board-certified physician in neurology. She's a brain doctor, and she's the USA Today best-selling author of The Busy Brain Cure. So a little while ago, I stumbled upon this term hurry sickness, which looking into the term further, I found out it was coined by cardiologists Meyer Friedman and Ray Rosenman. I may be mispronouncing those, by the way, I'm not sure. But this term is from their 1985 book called Type A Behavior and Your Heart. And hurry sickness is described as a behavioral pattern that emerges when a person has a feeling of being constantly behind, feeling rushed, having a sense of urgency that doesn't actually need to be there. So if you ever feel like you have to get everything done today or you want everything done as soon as humanly possible, maybe you wake up feeling behind on your to-do list before you even get started. At the end of the day, you wish there was more time in the day to get everything done. I know for me, in times of heightened stress and anxiety, I always have the wish, man, if I could just stop time for like 3 weeks to a month, I'd be solid, right? It would allow me to catch up on everything or feel like my life stuff and work stuff is more manageable. So even if you have fantasies about stuff like that, you might be having this hurry sickness thing. So it's that consistent anxiety and stress, even if the things on your to do list are not life or death situations. So I obviously resonated with this term a lot. And even though I've made a lot of improvements in this area, years ago, I would have resonated with being a workaholic and stuff like that. I don't anymore, but it does still come up from time to time. And I'm just better at managing it and kind of talking myself through it. It hasn't gone away completely, but it has significantly improved. So I thought it would be great to have Dr. Romie on to discuss what she calls a busy brain and how it relates to this pattern of hurry sickness. So, Dr. Romie not only shares her own story of intense burnout and hospitalization, but we also discuss what she calls the stress success cycle that we can get stuck in and really how to break out of that. Also, how trauma can drive this overworking or compulsive working tendency, her findings around why more people are experiencing this busy brain issue, the impact that technology is already having on our brain. You guys, it's not great. She offers a variety of tips for reducing stressors for your health. I mean, everything from how you can code your to-do list to relieve anxiety to what kind of lab work you might want to get done if you're having a hard time with focus, anxiety, and sleep, the impact that belongings and even certain belongings can have on your psyche, how people in leadership roles can manage their energy and anxiety. And if you're struggling to make ends meet, you feel like you have to work 24/7 just to survive. Maybe you don't have access to healthcare or decent healthcare. Dr. Romie gives some guidance for what is available to you. And also, I had the question of, what about the people who love their work and they want to work all the time? They choose to work on their nights or weekends or whatever. Do they have to be mindful about overwork too and the impact it may or may not have on their health? So we cover a lot today. Here is my chat with Dr. Romie.
We've normalized hurrying, busyness so much. And I think this episode is for anyone that may be feeling alone out there and they just needed to hear that you and I are here with them in between their ears.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just, I've been in that place before and nobody asked if I was okay. And so you and I are here today to say, hey, sister, are you okay?
Absolutely. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your background, how you got into this work, anything that you want to share?
So, Delaney, fun fact I am the daughter of immigrants, and English is my third language. I am the firstborn child of three and the only daughter. And the story truly goes, as I discuss in my book, my dad walked into the newborn nursery and stopped everything and says, no, first I must pray, like put an intention, a mantra over my daughter. and literally pauses and says, I have one daughter and you will become a doctor. Then I was raised by my mother and a community of aunties. My dad, also a doctor, was busy. And they really understood the assignment. I was the first woman on my mom's side of the family, now many more, to go to college and graduate school, and the first one on my dad's side of the family to go to graduate school. And my favorite toy growing up in an era of Barbies and Cabbage Patch Dolls and Care Bears was my neon Fisher Price plastic stethoscope. And they said even until first or second grade, I took that with me every day because dad did. And if it got lost, it was like pandemonium in the house. And mission accomplished. I went to medical
Wow.
school and I entered neurology at a time where less than 5% of the brain doctors in America were women.
Oh
And
my
I loved my
gosh.
job, loved it. Was doing cutting edge research, not only seeing patients, but in women's hormones and the brain, epilepsy, migraines, and teaching medical students. And from the outside, it just looked perfect. Like she had done it. All the titles and labels on my
Mm,
shoes, on my lab coat, dutiful daughter, dog mama, doctor, professor. But inside Delaney, I was suffering
mm.
and I felt so alone. And this was like, you know, 15, 17 years ago, there weren't terms like you openly talk about on your podcast today of mental health crisis, being in burnout. I just thought somebody else had the remote control to my brain and somebody else was
Mm.
controlling my focus and anxiety. It was awful.
Was there a certain moment where you hit a wall and you're like, I something's got to change here? What was that for you that you kind of woke up to? There's a different way to do something.
Girl, I'm stubborn. Like I went into medical school. I'm stubborn like
Yeah.
my papa and my mama. She doesn't want me to admit on air that she's stubborn. And I knew I was struggling, but like everybody else listening, we keep pushing forward,
Mm,
right? We keep pushing, we keep pushing. And I learned firsthand that chronic stress can cause physical disease. Chronic stress can kill you. It almost killed me, and I should have known better. I'm a medical doctor. So that
mm.
point that I hit the wall was when I woke up after having life-saving cardiothoracic surgery
Oh,
and literally, Delaney laying in the hospital thinking nothing I learned in medical school or in my adulting manual until now is going to help me. I don't know what to do. And that was the moment.
wow.
And it took years for me to clean up my mess. I researched it, and that's why I'm here today. And I feel so strongly about having an authentic and raw conversation with you about our brain and mental health and the busy brain.
Wow, when you put it that way, you were a doctor that had to have life-saving heart surgery and nothing in medical school prepared you or, this wasn't openly discussed. What is the biggest difference in your life today having this maybe new way of living or this newfound knowledge for yourself? What is your life like today versus when you were in that cycle of burnout?
I call it the stress success cycle in my book. I felt like I always wanted more and I was never happy with what I achieved before. Delaney, does that make sense? So I
Oh
would get to
boy.
medical school and then I would
Yes.
stress out and be like, well, now I have to get into internship and then residency and then I have to do research and then I have to get a fellowship and then a job and then I need to meet someone and I need a date and I need to get him to propose. There was always a goal marker
Right.
that kept moving. And we're success driven professionals. Like I'm unapologetic about it. Back then, it was you would stress out, fake it till you make it. And I grew up in the music era of cassette tapes. So if you're the Spotify generation, it's more like put a filter on it and make it look pretty.
Mhm.
And that was what I think the biggest difference is today. I still have amazing goals, but to my best ability, do not allow myself to get stressed out over these things. And I practice what I preach with these brain shifts. And so you realize when you do that, you're not on this constant, I'm going to stress over something, I succeed, and then you stress again. Instead, it is embracing this journey and most days with like a childlike joy.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing all of this. I'm really curious about, you mentioned that your dad really wanted you to be a doctor. And do you feel like you would have been drawn to that work without any influence in the family? Because
Yeah.
you do mention that you love the job.
A lot of parents hear this and ask me that. And because I think we have a different culture, the label now is the tiger mom or the tiger dad.
Mm,
I just have to say, it's maybe what I call, and I don't want to speak for my whole diaspora. I'm of South Asian descent, but it's what some of us call Asian excellence. And
Mm.
I'm so thankful that they set a bar of excellence for me back then because, girl, back then, girls weren't allowed to track into science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine. I grew up in a really small town in Illinois in a public education school system. If I didn't have my dad and my mom and aunties advocating for me, I would have been stuck in home economics class burning pancakes. And to this day, I can't make pancakes well, right? And and really no harm to people who love to cook or home care is your forte, but
Yeah.
I enjoy the science and math. Now, here's the other thing. I don't know that any of my elders saw it then, but you know, those, I call them the angel moments that like the angels are directly speaking to you. I remember having a couple of those. And one of them was watching Connie Chung, Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer on TV. They were the first models of intelligent, well-spoken women that I was seeing on TV. And I was like, that's going to be me one day. And my mom and I is, oh, they're not going to put a brown girl on TV. You go back and study your math and science and become a doctor. And then the other thing was we would fly internationally to meet family members. And I remember seeing these glorious, beautiful women in suits as the flight attendants, and they seemed to have glamorous lives. And I was like, I was really drawn to that. Now, you
Mm.
could take it literally that I wanted to grow up to be a flight attendant or a travel agent or a journalist. But when you look at my life today, I am in the national media, thank God, as a brain and mental health expert. And when I got to go with this book, it hit the bestseller list to NBC Nightly News. I cried on the elevator the entire way up.
Mm.
Tears of childhood joy. The young Romie and me was speaking. The security guard, poor guy, he still remembers me. The producers tell me, thought I was a mental health patient. They were like, no, no, she's a brain doctor with a best-selling book. I was like, oh my God. There was even the peacock logo on the carpet. Diane Sawyer was here. Like, that was it. And I travel internationally now as a keynote speaker. So I'm
Yeah.
that woman in the suit.
Yeah, you're
And
rocking a hot suit right now. I mean, you did it.
thank you. Yeah, I got dressed up for us sisters. Okay,
I
and
love it.
also I was on TV interviews prior to doing this today. There's a lot of breaking news in the brain health world today. So maybe the signals we get as a in a child, they do happen, but maybe not in the way we anticipated. And
Yeah.
when you can release into that joy and break out of that stress success cycle, I just 3 weeks ago turned 50 and I'm having these moments of childlike joy. And I feel cognitively sharper than when I was 25 and graduated from medical school.
Wow. I'm so excited about this conversation because I recently came across a term called hurry sickness. I saw an article and it resonated with me because they described it as this feeling of being constantly rushed or feeling behind. And there's this sense of excessive time urgency, even when there's no need for it. Like I never feel finished with the things that I want to do, like you were talking about. So it's definitely been a struggle for me to sit down with myself. I have to constantly, daily remind myself what's a self imposed deadline? What's a real deadline? So I would love to hear your perspective on where you think this, like, kind of fake urgency almost comes
Yes.
from.
Yes.
And also, like, if you have a different definition for this stuff, I would love to hear that too. But yeah, anything that you want to share. Why? When it's not
Well,
real.
thank you. This was a term that started to come up largely in the pandemic as the world was opening up again. And we
Okay.
had been in most people were in a quiet place at home. And then all of a sudden it was a shock to our systems of, oh my God, the world opened up. Was this the frenetic pace I was living my life all these years? Like, I can't handle all this on my schedule, especially, for your
Mm.
listeners who are working parents or like myself, caregiver to elderly loved ones and a senior pet who's laying down on the ground right now, right?
Yeah.
That is it. And hurried sickness is a little different than busy brain. And I want to double click on that. Hurry
Mm.
sickness is we don't recognize we have a busy brain. And I'll tell you that in a minute. And so we're allowing our schedules and our to do list to control us. And when
Yes.
we have a busy brain, everything feels like a code red emergency. Like a real code red emergency in your personal life is the house on my hair is really on fire, or a
Right.
loved one, it has like a life-threatening problem. In business, there are emergencies. Like we have an extensive tech stack that powers our busy brain system. If one part of it goes down, that's a code red. We need to take care of it. But when you have a busy brain, everything gets coded as an emergency. Every email, oh my God, I must answer it now. Oh, I didn't do a LinkedIn post today. Oh, wait, I'm late for this podcast interview. Like everything becomes that. And at the core of it is really a busy brain. And that's what I'm here to talk about today.
So, do you think like this busy brain concept? Because my husband, not like this at all. And this is me to a T. And so, is this genetic? Is it social conditioning? Is it like familial conditioning? Like, what, why? Why some of us and not all of us
Yeah.
have this?
So one, it's not gender specific, though the root
Okay.
cause is different in both genders. We did the research. So we have something we call the busy brain test. It's a validated neuropsychology test that's looking at the state of your brain. So if you have this hurried sickness or you relate to these symptoms I'm about to list, we have a 20 question test you can take online for free,
Mm,
takes less than 4 minutes, and it gives you a brain score. We did that with 17,000 people between December 2020 and December 2022. And that is
wow.
where I was like, oh, this is what happens with the busy brain. It wasn't just my brain.
Right.
Why does it happen? And then I'll define busy brain is because we have chronic stress. We have a bucket known as our mental capacity, and it's full.
Hmm.
I don't judge what it's full of, whether it's self imposed or real life issues of people losing a job, losing a loved one, losing a house, like all the things, you know?
Yeah.
And one more thing gets added in there. Like you needed to go pick up your child from dance practice tonight at 9 p.m. and you're running late, or you have a podcast interview stacked back to back today. Those are things you normally handle and it tips you over the edge.
Mm,
That's chronic stress or mental capacity. Well, it turns out men and women have this problem in a post pandemic world. We're at capacity, and that creates a particular pattern of neuroinflammation in our brain in the
mm.
airport traffic control tower of our brain. And that's what causes busy brain. And so that's why some of us, everything feels like a code red emergency. And the rest of us are like, I'm fine. What's your problem today? That's what's going on.
So, there's actually inflammation in people's
Yes.
brains. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So inflammation, thank you for letting me geek out on the brain
Oh,
science. See,
yeah,
I was
please.
like
Learning
born
so
to do
much.
this. Yes. So inflammation in the brain is nothing new. In the 1990s, when I went to medical school and started my neurology residency, we knew there are different patterns of inflammation in the brain that causes diseases that we've all heard of. Things like that are really sad, but stroke, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's disease. But in the last 7 years, we learned that if you're just living under chronic stress the way I was as a junior professor and doctor working 100-hour work weeks
Oh my
without a
god.
life in
Yeah.
heels, by the way,
Oh,
that you can actually have that inflammation in your brain happen just because you're stressed out. And it
wow.
happens in a particular area of your brain called the hypothalamus, the airport traffic control tower that controls your entire circadian rhythm. And that airport traffic control tower is, where do you live, Delaney? I forgot to ask you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm in Los Angeles
Los
area.
Angeles. Okay, I
Yeah.
thought so. So think of bad weather going through LAX or a power outage and the airport's closed. It's
Mhm.
not only a problem for the airport traffic control tower in LA with all the planes grounded and that can't land. LA is a massive international destination with flights connecting to Taipei, Tokyo, London, Chicago, Orlando, which is home for me. And then all of a sudden, within seconds, other flights are delayed and canceled. That's exactly how our brain works. It's connected to your memory, your mood, your gut, your hormones. And so it was why chronic stress, one more thing pushed me over the edge and it affected my esophagus and my digestion. And by the time they diagnosed what was going on with me, I had precancerous lesions. And by the way, I was only 33, 30, 40 years old.
Wow. The inflammation that's happening in the brain, it's like almost like the chicken or the egg, what came first, right? Do some people have more inflammation genetically, or does the inflammation develop because the way that you're responding to stress is
It's
impacting
on the stress and the
okay.
sleep deprivation and the other root causes that I break down. It's not genetic that we can find. You know, you hear inflammation in the brain, like we know about, a small percentage of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's diseases are genetic. There is no genetic link with this. This is because of stress, because we did these 17,000 tests, right? And
Yeah.
then the researcher in me wanted to go, well, what are the patterns we were noticing? It was these three symptoms. I can't focus. Do I have adult onset ADHD? I'm anxious and I can't fall asleep or stay asleep.
Yeah, all things that I thought for myself. I thought I had ADHD within the last like few years. Turns out I was just very anxious. My anxiety was so high that I had ADHD symptoms.
Yes.
And I didn't even think that was a possibility. And so I really
Mhm.
had to, I've made a lot of lifestyle changes over the
Yes,
last handful of years, but I just didn't even realize it was affecting my body that way.
it is. Thank
So
you for sharing that so honestly, because so many
yeah.
women listening to this who are high achieving professionals like you and I are going to relate to that. That's exactly what I was going through as a doctor. And adult onset ADHD is real. For
Mm.
some women, it was missed in our childhood, but for others, it's because of the chronic stress and the lifestyle that we have now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's amazing, making certain changes, then lowering my anxiety that I don't have those symptoms anymore. And I could have easily probably gone and gotten a prescription or something like that, and thinking this whole time I have ADHD, and it was my anxiety was through the roof. So I know for me, daily meditation has become a necessity to quiet my mind a little bit. I do it at different times throughout the day. I don't have like a set schedule. I also like making lists for myself of like what actually has to get done versus what's just kind of floating in my head and causing me stress. Do you have any other tips for how we can help ourselves a little bit?
So, thank you for sharing. Mindfulness and meditation is also a change that I've made that is a regular part of my life since 2010 when I had surgery. Here is the thing, could I be honest with you, Delaney? Most people
Yes.
I met were like, I tried meditation. My company had a meditation app and it didn't work. I can't quiet my busy brain.
Mhm.
We are masters of time management techniques and productivity tools, and the busy brain was still happening. That was what clued me in as a doctor that something deeper was going on. So, the first tip I say is, hey, take your busy brain test and get a big busy brain score. Because
Mm.
what I had and what you're describing is the busy brain. You had two out of these three symptoms, right? And there's a problem, what I call the stimulant sedative cycle we need to break. Most women are on caffeine and coffee and energy drinks all day, or the doctor will go and, not incorrectly, look at your symptoms, score you, and give Vyvanse or Adderall. 85% of all prescriptions of Adderall, Vyvanse, and drugs like this, stimulants, are used in the United States and mostly by adults as performance enhancing to get through our day. Like, we can't
Wow.
be on that. And then
Yeah.
booze or a sleeping pill at night. Like, we want to break that, right?
Right.
What's actually, so step one is that. Step two is I want to get us to one of the five key areas in the brain shift protocol that is the underlying root problem. So your airport traffic control tower's off. Where is it causing a problem? There are five key areas. S, sleep or your circadian rhythm. H is hormones. I, we look for particular markers of inflammation.
Mm.
F is the food of how we fuel ourselves without going on a diet. That's toxic. I don't believe in diets and cleanses. And T is the role of technology. So there's five key areas. Everyone is a little different. And that's why we address them in the book. And if you have a score above 30, go straight to chapter 10. We walk you through the 8-week protocol with stories and action steps of what to do to heal it.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah, you mentioned technology. I'm somebody like I got a lot of friends who love TikTok and they're on there all the time. When I have signed into that thing, after a minute, I am so overwhelmed. It is so overstimulating for me, like
Same.
social media. Why doesn't it affect everybody that way? Like what might be going on in my brain that I just can't I have to cut that stuff out. I deleted all my social media a few years back. I mean, it doesn't work for me. It does not make me feel good. What's going on with that?
I think the honest thing is with your meditation practice and your mindfulness around your anxiety and difficulty focusing, you are noticing and self aware enough to notice that when I log on to these lower vibration places
Yeah.
that are fueled on addiction,
Right, right.
just like crack cocaine, gambling, over shopping, overspending, you're not feeling good. Unfortunately, most people don't have that. I have that same feeling with TikTok or Instagram Reels. They're just feeding you things. And I'm like, this is not me. This does not feel good. I think most of us who are, calming a busy brain and that we've done the work, those things don't feed to us. But to the average person around the world, I want to explain what's happening. One, if you're a working professional, it may not even be TikTok or Instagram Reels. It's our work emails or work text messages. This
Mm,
FOMO of let me check it to make sure, again, code red, I didn't miss something emergent. And it's not emergent, but we feel like we have to answer it, even if it's in our personal time, right? Same with
yeah.
text messages. You put it down and it's a dopamine response because, oh, I'm worried. Let me open my phone, check my email. Everything's okay. And then what happens? You're in the valley and the dopamine's wearing off, and you go back and it's addiction, like a hit after hit, right? Of crack
Mhm.
cocaine. Same thing when you look at TikTok. You think it's making you feel good because you saw something that made you laugh or that touched you, but it's really stimulating that addiction dopamine reward center. You're going to have a peak and then you're like, I should stop. And then you get into a valley. And by the time you're ready to stop, TikTok feeds you something else to give you that dopamine high again, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's that. And Instagram is the same way, TikTok, your work emails. But what's really also, and I go through this in chapter 9, contributed to the adult onset ADHD, it's not just social media. It's also the blue light, 1 to 2 hours before bedtime that is disturbing us. And the blue light blocking glasses from smart TVs or laptops or phones does not work. And
Mm.
then the third thing is multi digital device use. So I'm doing this interview. I have two massive computer screens, laptops here, my phone's running a business doing work. That's how a lot of us work.
Yeah.
And just think, if you're binge watching Netflix at night, your phone is probably in your hand and you're simultaneously texting or scrolling social media while they're watching something. And so that's also creating this dopamine burst addiction and down. And that's what we need to stop.
Oh, because, social media, the technological advances that we've had in the past, what, 5 to 10 years weren't
Yes.
always around. How do you think this is going to impact people going forward? Is this kind of busy brain just going to be the norm and people think that's normal and don't realize that there's another way to live? I mean, what do you foresee happening if people don't get this under control?
It's already happening. In our
Right.
studies, 82% of people had a busy brain. And I give keynote lectures now for a living. I'm
Wow.
in a room of intelligent people in every industry who've reached this place like you and I of what we would call success. Okay.
Right. Right.
And 70 to 80% of the audience will raise their hand. We're already there. And how is that showing up personally in our lives? Is mom or dad guilt is getting worse.
Mm.
We aren't having the time to sleep or do the things we know, a lot of us, that would fulfill our souls. For like you and I, that's meditation. For me, that is definitely prioritizing sleep. Other people, they have to get exercise in a certain day. We're allowing the things that fuel our mind, body, and spirit, we're taking them out of our lives, right?
Mm.
What does that look like professionally, whether you are employed for a living or an entrepreneur? Your productivity is shot. It is reducing engagement of our employees. It is reducing retention. There are more mental health crises happening in work. I mean, I would argue we're already seeing the negative effects of a busy brain. We
Yeah.
don't have to prescribe to that. We can
Right.
have a human moment and say, wow, I have busy brain, and I'm not going to judge myself that I couldn't turn my brain off in meditation or yoga class, or I'm fine for a day or two after Reiki and then I'm back suffering again. Let's fix your brain.
Right, right. And do you think like before certain technological advances, people were struggling with busy brain and now this has worsened it? Or
Yeah.
this is like a kind of a new thing that humans haven't really seen before?
I think both is true. So we definitely know from the medical literature that I discuss in the book, the adult onset ADHD is definitely a new phenomenon as digital devices have has grown that
Wow.
we see. And then the high levels of stress that we see, this chronic stress, has also gotten worse during the pandemic and in a post-pandemic world. So some of these patterns we're seeing are new. I would argue my colleagues, as a neurologist, the psychiatrist, the therapist would say, "Hey, Delaney, we were in a mental health crisis, in the early like 2010, 11, 12. Sure, we all saw it, but the world didn't see it." And
Mm.
that's the good thing about social media. People got to have honest conversations, and it woke up the population, humanity, schools, corporations to say, wait, we're feeding into this. What's our role in fixing it? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a big minimalist. I like owning like not many things. I just find it
Yeah.
more relaxing and it reduces my stress not to see clutter. I know owning a lot of belongings can lead to like they need a lot of maintenance and then you're busy doing that. You're also spending maybe more money and that is, maybe financially stressful. Is there any kind of connection or studies that you know about between the level of stress somebody might be experiencing and like the belongings in their environment or how their environment is set up?
Yes, it's on 3 levels. When we have a busy brain, so some people, it maybe they can't get off TikTok or work emails. Other people, it's shopping, and it's that stress success
Mm.
cycle. Oh, I'll be happy when I can afford that next new suit or designer bag, and you get it, and then you want the next thing, right? That's a stress success cycle that you're stuck in because of a busy brain. That's never enough. You're shopping. So then you're collecting things. It doesn't matter if it's clothes, home organization, electronics. I don't care what it is, cars, it's just clutter. The second thing is, we have a lot to learn from ancient wisdom. And so feng shui is, traditional Chinese healing. And this
Yeah.
idea that when we want to stay healthy and heal, part of it is what's going on in our brain and mind. One part is body, and the third part is home or your environment, the feng shui. So there's direct correlations. Psychology is finally catching up to that traditional Chinese healing and spirituality of feng shui to say, to your point, it's again a chicken and egg phenomenon. If you see a lot of clutter, does that person have anxiety, a busy brain, and they're stressed out, and that's why they can't organize? Or is the chaos also making it worse, right? It's just a vicious cycle.
Right.
And it's why I loved in the pandemic watching the home edit
Oh,
and
yes.
right, or and those
Binge
homes
that
where
immediately.
binge that immediately, or the homes where you're shocked and seeing people who hoard.
Right.
There's a relief you even have in TV watching it right away. That's the
Right.
psychology of clutter. In our protocol, we email you the weeks 2 and 3 of the protocol when people take the busy brain test. In the 7-day sleep challenge, a lot of things in there are based on feng shui that I got from my feng shui teacher, which was
Ooh,
clear out the belongings from underneath your bed. And if you have a bed that has drawers underneath it, make sure everything is organized and that you have things there that do not disturb the psyche. So, like, I've had clients that had a sword collection in the drawers underneath the bed. Like, don't
oh,
have something
interesting. Yeah.
that is. The other two things is we immediately, I say in that 7-day sleep challenge, is go clean out your closet bedroom. That's a energy of what's in your subconscious mind in your bedroom. And the third thing, it's obvious, but hard for a lot of people to do, is please take out your work desk out of your bedroom because it's literally a psychological signal reminding you of work.
Oof. Oh, yes. I have feng shuied and Marie Kondoed and minimalized my life,
Yes.
and that actually kind of became probably an addiction too, of like, now my brain was so focused on it's gotta be tidy, or I don't want any clutter, and I'm sure that can probably, maybe not be so helpful,
Here's
but
the thing. No, I don't call that an addiction. That may
okay.
be a busy brain self-judgment. In my book, my self-judgment or inner critic is the voice of my Indian aunties. If something
Mm,
is serving you, Delaney,
yeah.
and it's healing you, then don't judge it. Other
Thank
thing
you.
is, if Marie Kondo's "Does It Spark Joy" method doesn't work for my shoe collection, then don't judge me because I don't want to do it, right?
Right, right.
That's how I see that. So if it's working for you, more of it, please. No judgment.
Oh, thank you. Because sometimes I'm like, "Oh, is this, like, too compulsive?" And now I've gone the
Mm,
other way, but
mm.
it really helps. I mean, it does help my
Yes.
mind daily.
Okay, I've never said this on a podcast interview. When I have my menstrual cycle, there is a level of busy brain that can go up with those hormonal changes. And for me, that is anxiety. I love organizing things during that time, but nothing makes me happier than to organize a
Mm,
friend's place because there's no emotional attachment. I have
yes.
friends that now know my cycle and their pantry is ready for me, their refrigerator, their lingerie drawer. Last May, I was with my best friend. In May, I was with my best friend Melissa, and my period came, and she's like, "I'm gonna go pick up my daughter from school. Do you want to come? Or I know you're tired from your period." I'm like, could I just go in your closet? And in 1 hour, she had a home edit closet, walk-in closet when she came home and had
Oh
tears of
my
joy. And I was like,
gosh.
I am healed. That is my therapy. I ain't gonna judge it. I'm gonna do it. So Delaney, if you got anything that's left to organize, I'll
Yeah.
come LA sister. Next time it's my
I bet
cycle.
like, "Wait a minute, are you about to bleed? Because I got a hutch that really needs some organization." I resonate with that so much though. My friends know that they can call me if they want to organize or declutter. It's so fun for me. Um,
Yes.
let's say that somebody feels like they've made a lot of internal shifts with their busy brain, and they're finding more peace at home and with their daily tasks and stuff, but externally, when society praises us for our accomplishments and being hard workers and getting a lot done, how can somebody kind of protect that spaciousness in their life, especially if there's a lot of people at their work that don't
Mhm.
feel that way?
Yeah, I am a true believer in myself as a leader. I'm a chief wellness officer in a company of over 12,000 employees all over the United States and of 5 generations. That I have to manage my energy first. I'm responsible for the energy I bring in the room, and that is a reminder I have to tell myself and my practices on a regular basis, and that my energy will transfer. And so the only praise that counts for me is my connection to divine and what I know on my success cycle without the stress cycle I want to achieve. Now, if someone congratulates me, let's say on my USA Today best-selling book, I will accept that praise because I want to model that for other women
Mm.
that there is no shame in having accomplishments
Yeah.
and seeking that if it's important to you, but nor am I going to judge someone that has no ilking to read or write a book. No worries, right? So I think that's it. It's this level of I can control my energy and what comes in and out. And then if other people are talking about busyness or wow, Romy, you've got a boundary and you didn't take my work call because it was evening. I don't let someone project their busy brain on me. I now I'm in a place that I can recognize it and have compassion, and also in a compassionate way set a boundary and say, yes, this was my evening to be with my elderly parents, or I was traveling to another speaking engagement. And this was my time. And it's really training people around your boundaries. But if I had, when I have a busy brain or when I had a busy brain, I would likely be cutting or triggered. And instead, I'd be like, I'm so sorry. And then the inner critic and the judgmental voice of my Indian aunties would be in my brain, like, oh my God, I offended Delanie and she'll never call me again. Or, something
Mm.
like that. Or I'll lash out at you instead or be like, well, you don't even know how busy I am. I bet you don't have. And then we start comparing our busy schedules, right? So
Mm.
again, it's an internal management system. I am not negating that there are challenging things happening in the world right now in the news cycle. We are allowed to feel bad. We have loved ones that go through things that are out of our control. But, in my mind, that's the code red emergency we should be going towards. If a loved one needs us, it shouldn't be me fretting over a work email over, colleague changing the schedule for a work meeting.
Right. Yeah. And I'm curious to know, I mean, you've worked with a lot of leaders, it sounds
Mhm.
like. It's such a trickle down effect. Like when the CEO or the owner or the leader of the company is stressed, everybody seems stressed around them because if they think something is
Absolutely.
life or death urgent, we all
Yes.
do. Right. And
Yes.
so, what have you found has been the most helpful for people in that position that do feel like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders and a whole company on their shoulders?
Having been around hundreds of C-suite executives, professional athletes where they are in the public eye with the pressure, is they understand the rule that I just said, that they're responsible for the energy they bring in the room and their energy management. Now, because we all have human moments that tip us over into that busy brain, that last, drop of water at mental capacity in a stressful season, we all have it.
Right.
We take them through variations of this brain shift protocol. And one of the key things that we didn't talk about that I feel very proud that I was able to create was there's an extensive lab slip for men and women in chapter 16 and the online companion website of our book. Now, if you've had or anyone's had a blessing to work with an integrative functional medicine doctor like myself or colleagues, that's great. But doing that means you're paying 5, 10, $20,000 in cash. I
Mm.
needed to make this accessible for everyone in the US insurance system. So we created a lab slip that was pared down but targeted to everyone to take and go to your primary care doctor. And don't just say I read the book or I heard Delanie's podcast. Tell them the symptoms you're having. Like Delanie, I was like, someone has a remote control to my brain. I can't focus. You thought it was ADHD. It was really anxiety. We get these labs done. And for women, especially, the three things that were standing out the most was 1 in 8 women has a misdiagnosis of thyroid disease. It's been missed because the doctors don't check it or they just check a TSH. Majority of us women with a thyroid issue, the presenting symptoms are I can't focus, I'm anxious, do I have ADHD?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
thyroid's being missed, especially if you're like myself, a woman of color, even 1 in 4 chance for men and women to have thyroid. The second thing is a low vitamin D as in dog, D3 levels that we look at. And the third thing is insulin resistance. You're early pre-diabetic and your blood sugars are fluctuating. And those things can easily be fixed, right? And so that's what I do with leaders. They were like, they recognize quickly, they're self-aware, I have a problem. What's going on with my energy? Let me look at what's coming into my brain. Let me also look what's happening to my body. Let's fine tune it. Combination of traditional medicine, holistic health, supplements, if it needs prescription medicine like thyroid, fine, and take care of it.
Right. Oh, wow. It's interesting. Yeah, you mentioned thyroid. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's like 6
Uh,
years ago.
I was about to ask with your symptoms. I'm like, it's screaming Hashimoto's autoimmune
Right.
thyroiditis.
But
Yes.
I am actually I was able to reverse it. I'm completely in remission
Amazing.
now. I so the two things that happened that I did and my doctor was shocked, but I went on a plant-based diet, so I've been vegan for like 6 years,
I
and then
love
the
that.
other thing is I got off of hormonal birth control. From your perspective, what happened maybe in my body that shifted?
Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease. So
Mm,
then remember, I talked about the airport traffic control tower. You were at a chronic stress, and your tipping point was like Hashimoto's, we're going to show up out loud. And what did you say? I mean, you're following the Busy Brain book. This is literally me and the other clients in the book in chapter 6. I can't focus. Do I have ADHD? What's going on? And the labs get checked and it's Hashimoto's, right?
wow.
So you took out certain foods
Right,
that were promoting inflammation in
right.
the body, that were promoting neuroinflammation. So when you did that, that calmed down the neuroinflammation and the thyroid inflammation. The hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary and then connected to the thyroid, right? And
Yeah.
then it sounds like you've made other lifestyle changes. You were already meditating, which is key. And what was the other thing you said you did?
Went off of like
Yeah.
hormonal birth control
Yeah.
pill.
And
Yeah.
so what we see is women that are on birth control or perimenopause and menopause, if you're taking extra estrogen and progesterone and not fixing the thyroid, it's a bigger stress on the thyroid. So you took off that feedback loop and
Oh.
now your thyroid normalized, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so
Mhm.
interesting because yeah, it does run in my family, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Wow, I wonder." But you also hear, like, other things run in the family, maybe habits and, the way that people view work and the busyness and all that stuff, and it's like, "Oh, I wonder if they could be helped with some changes as well around something like that." So let's say that somebody's tuning in right now and they're saying like, "This all sounds nice. I'd love to reduce my stress, but I don't have any help. The cost of living
Yeah.
is astronomical. I have a full-time
Yes.
job. When I get home, I got to do housework, take care of the kids." And they are in this cycle of working just to stay afloat. What could they do when they feel like they are so out of control?
Yeah, and that's really who I serve. I mean, again, I work on the corporate side, and while we've talked about the CEO and athletes I work with, again, most of the companies I work with have everyday people that are fighting the economic challenges, and what used to be considered middle class America is struggling, and that's why we wrote this book. So, number one, I would say take the busy brain test and get your brain score. And two, that I see you and I hear you and I believe in you and thank you because you are doing everything you can to, pay the rent, take care of your family, do what you can at your job, and financial stress is real. And so
Yeah,
this isn't the time to spiritually bypass that. It is the time to say we need to fix the root cause of the financial well-being for people that are not making a livable wage. So and don't have access to medical care. So I don't want to spiritually bypass that and that because that's something really important to me of access of healthcare to all.
right.
That's why the Affordable Care Act is in place, by the way. And when there's open enrollment starting in November, people can get the access to the healthcare insurance, and these labs are covered on that, right? So
Yeah.
that would be it. And then the other thing I would say is we said in the studies for women, especially the things we saw when you're under this much strain, the three things we were seeing that you can fix is the thyroid issues, a low vitamin D3, and insulin regulation. So in the book, week 6 of the brain shift protocol, week 5 and 6 are the nutrition. We say, I don't believe in putting people on diets and I want people to have comfort food, right? We all have family meals or things, religious holidays where we enjoy food. Do that, but you choose either the high glycemic carbs, white bread, white rice, white potato, white flour, white sugar, or you choose caffeine, one or the other.
Mm,
And those simple things. So, Affordable Care Act, if you don't have health insurance and can't have access to it. Two, get the labs done. Look for thyroid, vitamin D as in dog 3, and where your blood sugar pre-diabetes is. And then we gave you the food choices. And that alone will make you feel better, your
mm.
brain, and cope with it. And the last thing I will say, because women are more affected than men, ask for the raise, sister. Ask for the raise.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Yes, girl. Yes.
Um, I'm curious your thoughts about, what about the people who love work, the ones who are self-described married to my work, happy with it?
I am.
Yeah, do they also need to be mindful about the impact of overworking to their health, even though they're enjoying it
So
about it?
those 2 things don't coexist because if you're enjoying your work, I feel I loved my job as a doctor. I was overworked and not taking care of myself.
Mm,
Now I'm a chief wellness officer and also running my company on the side and working on a best-selling book, right? So this is I love my work. It is my life purpose. You know, I also have the privilege that I don't have children. It wasn't in my destiny. You read it in the book, right? The busy brain, fertility, everything that I went through. But I love my work, but I also have my boundaries.
Mm.
And so most people who love their work and are successful at their work, we have what we call sprints. So the 3-month period leading up to the launch of my book and the 3 months afterwards were my sprint. And then I was like, I am scheduling time off. My team is getting time off. I am going on vacation this summer for a prolonged period, right? So most people who love their work do have something that counteracts that.
Right.
If you are a workaholic to the detriment of your health, yes, there are parts of your job you love, but you're probably in that stress success cycle. You're fearing if I don't get these 20 things done and I'm going to, work all night to get them done, I'm going to get fired. That's a stress success cycle. That's different. Take the busy brain test and go through this protocol. It'll improve your productivity. You'll get to sleep again and have a personal life in the evening. And then that's a whole nother podcast of all of a sudden you're not working and you got free time and you're like, girl, what am I supposed to do?
Right. The people that work to the detriment of their health or their relationships
Mhm.
and they feel like they can't stop. I would imagine that is a very hard, that can be a tough cycle to break when you feel like maybe it's been a coping mechanism of staying busy that, I
Maybe
don't
for some
know.
people it's tough and other people it isn't, right? Because if I
Yeah.
put it out there, you're a workaholic, like you're a shopping addict or a TikTok social media addict or
Mm.
alcohol, and it's hard to overcome, then that's like also not putting healing energy out there. It's everybody's cycle. And what I know is when we give the busy brain test and rational people see a number, they're all of a sudden like, oh, my score is above a 30. I'm going to do something about it. We all have that self aware moment.
Mm.
I wrote this book and I'm here on your podcast today because I don't want people to end up in a hospital and then become self aware like I did.
Right.
We all have this life path, and I hope we learn lessons from the hard times as we do from the good.
Absolutely. Oh, something just came up that I want to ask you about. I heard this concept of trauma drive recently, where
Yes.
maybe
Yeah.
trauma is the thing that's driving you to stay busy all the time and all of that. What has been your experience with that, with any clients or studies that you've done?
Yeah, there's a lot of industries, and so I come from healthcare, and I can speak to that. There's a lot of trauma in healthcare, going up in the medical system, medical school, internship, residency, and so that's this drive of you have to work hard, or this fear of I will lose my job, and this is the only thing I was trained to do, and how will I pay the mortgage? My loved one will leave me. I'll lose my children. I'll end up homeless, living down by the river. Right? That fear
Yeah.
cycle will go in and it's unresolved PTSD. And everybody, again, copes with PTSD differently. And for some people, high functioning people, that can look like working to mask negative feelings or because work is somewhere where a lot of us can feel under control. And let me give you an example. It doesn't matter what your job is. You said it earlier at the top of the podcast. I have a to do list I have to do. And that's the one place I know if I check off my to-do list items, I'm in control of my life and I did good, or I
Oh,
got through this work day and I did good.
yeah.
I know I can control doing these 20 things to make sure I have a best-selling book and I'll feel good. And again, if that's the way someone is coping for now, um, I'm not going to judge, but I want to say that's a stress success cycle again. And instead, I'm modeling that you can have, I am an unapologetic, success-driven professional. Like, but I'm doing it better now, not perfect, without stressing myself out on the other side.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I feel so seen. How do you have a any guidance or tips for how to prioritize tasks when everything feels urgent to somebody?
Mhm. I do workshops with teams, and I want to give you all this right now. You've heard me allude to it. So we code things: red, urgent, emergent; yellow, urgent, same day; green, do or delegate.
Mhm.
And so what I actually ask people is after you've had a few nights of sleep, we get through week 1 or 2 of the protocol because we need some of that inflammation calm down and we need to restore a sense of sanity in the brain.
Mm.
I work with individuals or teams and say, let's look at our calendars for the last week. What was a red, yellow, or green? And then I ask you in your individual business, what is a code red in your business? What's a code yellow? And what's green? What can you do or delegate? Let's make these lists. Could we agree with our team members? If you're a leader, you work with a team. What do we agree on as a business? So people who manage hotels, a code red in a hotel would be the building's on fire, there's a flood, a guest had a health emergency, an employee had a health emergency. Getting an email about your night audit report is not a code red or even a yellow. It's a daily to do or a delegate away. And when we help people do that, they actually have this internal language with themselves when an email pops up or their calendar. Oh, that's a red, yellow, green, or with their team members. They literally will be in a meeting now. Is that a red that we need to interrupt this meeting, a yellow, or is that a green that we need to park over here?
Right. I love the coding and the lists. I have found that so helpful for myself.
What kind of lists do you make? I would love to know
Yeah.
that.
So I organize my calendar into two sections, to do and would be nice to do. So the left side is my to dos, which are things that have an agreed upon deadline, like a podcast recording with a guest or appointment or meeting. And then the right side, my would be nice to dos are usually personal and professional projects or chores that, yeah, it would be great to get done if I have time or energy, but can be moved to another day if I don't do them, no problem. I just find that, a lot of what's in my head that feels like it needs to get done right now is an illusion. And so when I put it on paper, I think my brain is processing it differently maybe than it letting, floating around in my head where I'm like, wow, none
Yeah.
of this is actually life or death.
So it's part of our week 2 protocol, the brain dump.
Yeah.
It's literally allowing your brain to see the words, touch the pen, touch the paper, and it's clearing out a memory server. It's literally like, sometimes you have to reboot your laptop or your phone. You're literally rebooting our brain when we write down that list, and we call it a brain dump. Your to-do list from work, your to-do list from home, then your emotions of the day.
Oh, yes, exactly. And I actually have my calendar. I put a line through my calendar and I use pencils. So I just move things that from the
I
would be
love it.
nice section to a different
Yes,
day.
you're moving it week-wise from red, yellow to green, and
Right,
everything
right.
felt like a red in your brain, it felt like a red in mine, and all of a sudden you're like, "No, this is what was important."
So helpful. Dr. Romie, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Anytime,
Is
Delanie.
there anything else that we didn't cover that you think is important for people to know? And of course, where can people find you, your book?
We started off this segment to say if you're struggling with a lot of the things Delaney and I personally talked about today, you're not alone. And I wish somebody had said this to me when I was sitting in the surgeon's office suffering, and hope had like literally departed my soul. Is, my sister, your brain is not broken. Your mind is not a mess. It just takes a single brain shift. Take the busy brain test for free. You'll get your score. Go straight to chapter 10 of the book and start the protocol. The Busy Brain Cure is available everywhere in the world in 8 languages where books are sold, Amazon, Audible. And if you're like, I don't have the time to read it, we even have an online course that'll walk you through the 8-week protocol.
Thank you so much. It was great
You're
meeting
welcome.
you, and congrats on the book and all the amazing work you're up to.
And thank you for having me and sharing this with the community. And by the way, if you have something that needs organizing, call me in my next cycle.
I'll be your side hustle. All right, everyone. You can go to drromie.com. That's drromie.com to take that busy brain test. And wrapping up with a quick Apple Podcast review of the episode. This one is from JustBro81. It says, I'm loving this podcast. I know this is a boring review, but I love listening to them and it gets me motivated. JustBro, JB. I mean, not a boring review at all. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave one. So glad that the podcast gets you motivated. That's awesome to hear that it's having that kind of impact on you. And I hope you're having a freaking wonderful day today. Sending you a major high five and double thumbs up. So, hey, if you want to leave a review, I will read it on the next episode that we record. And I will get to personally thank you for taking the time out of your day to leave one of these by taking some time on the podcast to give you a shout out and say, what's up? What's happening? Okay, everybody, take care of that beautiful brain of yours, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning into Self-Helpless. You can find our brand new merch, Patreon community, and other fun goodies at selfhelplesspodcast.com. We'd be thrilled if you left an Apple Podcast review, shared this episode with a friend, or post about it on Instagram and tag us at Self-Helpless Podcast so we could repost you and say hi. As an independently produced show, we sincerely appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody.